Hello, everybody. I am back again, and I have with me Jamal Vallair. I'm going to hand it over to him. He's going to tell you what he's all about and what he's gone through in life. Jamal, take it away.
Thank you so much. My name is Jamal Valllair, and I am a mindset and neuroscience peak performance coach, as well as the leadership development coach. I am actually blown away that at 37 years old, I have accumulated over 87,600 hours of organizational leadership training and experience, and have had the opportunity to lead over 3,000 people in leadership. I'm actually still blown away that as a neuroscience peak performance coach, that I've supported over 367 high-performing entrepreneurs and executives to teach them the brain science of how to unlock their genius and go work through their limiting beliefs in their personal and professional lives. I am completely blown away. And when I say blown away, I am looking at my bio, I was kind of shocked and humbled that after 19 years of military service, that I was selected out of 346,000 service members to help write the curriculum and for the United States Navy's leadership coaching program. But it wasn't always that way. You see me now where I have this confidence, this excitement about life, this sense of purpose, this sense of clarity. And that wasn't always my story. It was about 2010. I had a friend of mine. We were sitting down, we were talking, dialoguing, just having some fun. And she mentioned the idea of me becoming a speaker. And I paused. And when I say I paused, my heart literally dropped into my socks at the idea of being a speaker, because what most of people don't know about me is that I moved over 21 times before I was 18.
Wow.
I've lived in motels. I've been homeless almost 3 times. The idea of being a speaker was something that was so far-fetched. I was built so far off of scarcity and survival. And the idea of becoming a speaker overwhelmed me simply because I didn't think I was enough. I didn't think I was qualified. And secretly, internally, I said, surely God has somebody more special, more than me, if he wants to change the world. My survival mindset said, you've moved so many times. I don't know if you've ever had someone have to step over you to get to their kitchen because you're living in their living room or their basement.
Oh my goodness.
There are times where while my friends were wondering what were they going to learn in high school, I was wondering how long were we going to live in this particular location until we moved again. And so I was constantly stuck in this cycle of, surely my story is not special enough for someone else to be inspired and empowered. And so I continued my process. And for 5 years, 5 long years, she kept on just asking the question, hey, I think you should be a speaker. When I say 5 years, I mean 60 months, 260 weeks, 1,825 days of telling my dream no when I secretly wanted to say yes.
Oh my goodness, when you put it like that, wow.
So after the 5th year, I finally said, sure, I'll do it. I'll be a speaker. Because I was under the impression that would be the end of the conversation. She would leave it alone. What could you possibly see in me that I don't see in myself? Why do you keep on badgering this conversation about me being a speaker? And she says, thank you for finally saying yes. I've been telling my family about you for 5 years.
Wow.
And I said, what's so special about your family that you would tell them about me for 5 years? She says, my grandfather is Les Brown.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
One of the most profound speakers, international speakers in the world. Touched millions and millions of lives. And something she was able to see in me that she also saw in her family line of amazing speakers. And so he became my first teacher. I got a phone call on my birthday. And he says, I heard you finally said yes to the opportunity. And since you said yes, I want to be your first teacher.
Oh my goodness.
He
Wow.
he's the one who told me that there's greatness inside of you. You've heard him say it all the time.
Yes.
And so now I'm committed. I'm committed to being able to no longer live my life based on fear and scarcity and survival, but also know that there's wealth and there's abundance. But also understanding that the brain, when you train it a certain way, it looks for evidence of whatever you think is real.
I have so many questions for you, Jamal. If I may.
Absolutely.
So tell me, why was it that you moved so many times?
So just family. My mother I believe she was secretly a nomad. She just found different reasons to move. Sometimes it was financial. Sometimes it was she didn't want to stay in a certain place for too long. And so by happenstance, we were the collateral. You know, if my mom said she wanted to move, we wanted to move. She was married at one point and she was divorced and it was a single parent household and she was taking care of 3 kids. And so financially, sometimes we had to move in with other people. We had to live in basements. We had to live in the motels. Then we had, unsavory and unsavory to the left. And then you just learn to just move on to the next thing. And I think that's one thing in my family. We don't necessarily focus on what didn't go right. We just move on to the next thing. But one of the downsides of that is we don't process what we experience.
Ooh, that's so important.
So one of the challenges of just going to the next thing is you're really not able to fully be present because you're always worrying about the next thing. And that's where fear and doubt and insecurities rob us from actually stepping into our purpose, is because we have accumulated so much self-doubt, so much insecurity, just trying to get to the next thing. When we get an opportunity that's really ready for us, we shrink.
We shrink, yes.
One of my mentors, Mr. Les Brown, said, it is better to prepare for an opportunity and it not come than an opportunity present itself and you not be ready. And so what I've learned through the process of life is whatever that I'm dreaming for, prepare for it, even if no one's looking.
Right. That's amazing. What amazing advice. That's beautiful. So tell me, what is this what was the word you used?
Neuroscience peak performance coach. So it's a big word, but I like the coverage just to say brain science. Okay. I've always been curious on why we do what we do.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't want to go to college for 12 years to be a psychologist or a psychotherapist, but I've always been curious why we do what we do. And so when I was coming up, I knew I was funny. I knew I was entertaining, but I didn't think I was smart. Because when it came to tests,
you and how many other people?
So when it came to tests, I didn't always excel. At what point, I almost didn't graduate high school because this one standardized test, I'm probably like a C or B average student, but this standardized test, I let it have a grip hold on my intelligence because I didn't pass the first time and I had to take it a second time. And this is actually the first time I've told this story. And so I had so much guilt and shame because I allowed this test to define my IQ. And it was such a struggle for me that anytime I took tests, I had anxiety. I started thinking that the test was like, if I had the same answer too many times, I would change it. It's so much in my head that I forgot that I was really brilliant. And one of my favorite people, his name is Jim Quick. He says, it's not if you're smart, it's how you're smart. I've also learned over a period of time that EQ, emotional intelligence, is more powerful than IQ. Right. And so what helped me through this process is I lived with this limiting belief that I wasn't smart for almost 8 or 9 years. And so I even though I excelled, because when you're gifted in other areas, you just overcompensate. Yes. You try to hide the area that you hide the area that becomes a liability to your dream. And so I realized I had a coach. I heard her speak. She was actually a neuroscientist for 20 years. And I was listening to her speak and I was starting to get the concepts. And I was like, wow, I'm a lot smarter than I've given myself credit for. I didn't realize that there was a genius in me. And I think the language is very important. If I have a 5-year-old daughter, if I remind her that she's a genius as she grows up, I think she has a different capacity, what she believes she can accomplish. Yes. So versus you're not smart compared to someone else. Oh, yes. Yes. And Einstein says that once the brain has been expanded to one capacity, it can no longer go to what it used to be. But he also says that if you measure a fish by its ability to climb a tree, the fish will think it's stupid.
Yes. Oh,
And so,
yeah, that's wonderful. Yes.
and so rather than taking society's metrics, rather than taking
Yes.
other people's metrics of
Yes.
intelligence, you have to understand that you are a very unique being. There is never be another version of you. There may be people with similar attributes, but there will never be another version of you. Long story short, I started to listen more, and I realized once you remove all the labels that you
Yes.
adopted that you weren't born with, you're not smart, you're not funny, all these different things, you realize that you can train the brain to respond a certain way. These neural pathways are the exact same brain. It's not that people are more gifted, more talented, it's that they have focused on a skill set longer than you, and they have perfected that skill set. So the actor is able to be an Academy or Oscar awarding actor. The musician is able to be operate at a level of Mozart because of the time. And three things that I've learned when it comes to development is mindset, heart set, and skill set.
I
If
like
you're
that.
able to identify these three things, impossible is on the other side of those three things. Whatever I believe in myself, I make true.
Yes.
I
Yes.
look for evidence this is possible.
Yes.
My heart is constantly reminding me of the depth of who I am and what I can achieve.
Right.
And then the skill set is what is the skill that I need to make sure I spend more time and
Yes.
energy in building so I can have whatever I have a vision for. A lot of people have sight, but a lot of people don't have vision. And vision helps you deal with short-term frustrations or shortcomings. When you have vision to say, I'm going to look 3, 5, 10 years ahead of time, that allows you to say, if I make a mistake on day 2, that doesn't mean I'm a failure.
No.
One of my favorite coaches, he says, failure or failing is only finding answers in life.
Right.
There's no
Beautiful.
such thing as failure. I either win or have an opportunity to grow, or I either have wisdom. And so these are some of the principles that I've adopted about if I reminded people that they're a genius. How many times have you been told you're a genius? And if you heard it more often, what possibilities would you be able to create if you were reminded about how brilliant, how gifted, and how
we wouldn't
talented
be
you were?
afraid of math.
You would not be afraid of it. But even if you were afraid of it, you say
you'd overcome it. Yes.
It's a skill. It's not that I'm not smart. It's just I haven't spent enough time building the skill set.
Yes.
And if you build the skill set and you believe that with the mindset of there's nothing that I really can't learn, because neuroplasticity says that the brain has the ability to expand, but it also has the ability to attach itself to new belief systems. And so many times we're limited to belief systems that started from ages 0 to 7. Because that's where the brain starts its first opportunity to learn all the rules of love, acceptance, power, ability, capacity. In the first 7 years, that's where we learn. And many times we don't go back, and you can be 35, you can be 45, you can be 65, you can be 85. And many of us are grown adults operating with a belief system of 0 to 7.
Right.
And so if we never go back to those conversations, I always like to ask, where did you learn that? And then they'll go back through memory lane and say, when I was 12, somebody told me this.
And then it's stuck.
Somebody told me
this. You never changed it. Yeah.
And I made it believe, and I made that particular statement or that particular story to mean something. And I've guided my entire life based on that one meaning. And I said, what if we were to change and upgrade that belief system? I had one client that I was working with, and she had a limiting belief about charging for her worth as a personal development coach. And she was about 57 years old. And I asked her, where did you learn that charging more was greedy? And she went back, she looked back, she's like, well, I'm from the islands. And in the island culture, if my father told me because I'm the oldest daughter, if I asked for more because we were poor, then I was being greedy.
Oh my. Wow.
And she didn't realize that. So for 57, so for all the way up to 57, that was the limiting belief that was behind charging for her value. She says, I kept on shortchanging what I would charge because I was counting other people's pockets. And I used the belief system at 12, at 57. Then she calls me back and says, Jamal, after we worked through that, I charged 3 times much more, and they paid it because that was the value, was what I was giving. And I no longer use that scarcity story. It may have helped me at 12, but it didn't help me at 57.
So how do you change that belief? First of all, how is it as simple as asking the question, where did it come from? And then how do you change it?
So one of the things is I've learned that questions are very, very powerful. Their brain is a supercomputer.
Right.
It operates at 258 miles per hour from one thought to the other. That shows you how beautiful it is. If you've ever been on Google and you see in that upper left-hand corner when you did your search, how quickly you got the results, it's pretty fast.
Yes.
And so it starts with asking a powerful question. Many times we ask surface level questions or shallow level questions, and we end up getting shallow level answers. Why is this happening? Why is this happening to me? Right. Versus what do I need to learn through this process? What is coming out of me so I can be better? Right? If we ask deeper level questions, Jay Shetty has this statement. He says, if you want to go 3 steps further, you have to go 3 steps deep. 3 steps deep. And so rather than operating on the surface of the victim mentality, right, go into the purpose mentality. What is the purpose of me going through this experience? Identify the story. So I like to break it down in this. We have stories, we have scripts, we have lines, and we have beliefs. So what's the story that you're telling yourself? What's the script? Who were all the people who were present in this particular script, right? And what is the story? And then what was the line? What was the thing that was said to you that you gave it a meaning? And after you gave it that meaning, what is the way that we can reverse engineer that particular belief system? Because usually that belief system is empowering or disempowering. Yes, that's right. So now that you see the power of it being disempowering, what would be the polar opposite? What would be the empowering belief that you can replace that belief system with? Yes. And then how can you rehearse that? Because you have a conscious mind and a subconscious mind. So then you tell a new story based on that? Right. Or you are able to speak to that version of yourself. So I've worked with some clients and they were able to speak to that 12-year-old version of self and say, thank you for the lesson. Ah, okay. Thank you for the lesson. That's like inner child work. Yeah. So closing the loop of being able to say, hey, I needed that particular lesson at 12. But I've learned it at 35. I no longer need that story. Ah. And when you heal from the story no longer becomes your own. It becomes wisdom that you pass to someone else. Because for many people, you are the mountain that could not be moved. And so when you learn to move mountains, you're proof for other people it's possible. Yes, that's so true. That's always what I also say is if someone else can do it, that means I can do it as well. You can do it as well. It's actually proof, it's evidence that we can make a shift, but we have to realize that, and a lot of times we don't. The brain is always looking for evidence of whatever you believe. If you feel that there's not enough money, your brain will look for evidence of that. If your brain is looking for saying that there's more than enough, it's abundant, you'll find it. If you'll find I even use this simple as I always find a good parking spot, no matter what. That's right. And when my wife and I are driving, she's like, there's no parking. I said, I always find great parking. And she's like, why does this happen every single time? I know there's no parking. I said, it's whatever you focus your mind to, that's what you give power to. And that every time you find a parking, it reinforces the belief that you. It reinforces the belief. Yeah. And so I always use this phrase, where did you learn that? Because you adopted it. You weren't born with it. You accepted it. You weren't born with it. Somebody, either society, either culture, either friends or family, they told you a belief system and you adopted it. Yes. And maybe when you were younger, you didn't have the conscious mind to reject it. But now you have the power of choice. Yes. And the power of choice is I get to create whatever my reality is, the good, the bad, and the ugly. I think even as children, we are powerful in the sense that we don't always listen. Our parents and teachers and society can control our actions, but they can't really control what's going on in their heads. And I say that respectfully because I was the one who never accepted it internally. I did whatever they asked me to do, but I questioned it. I never took it as absolutely. Yeah. And I think that comes with some level of how we've evolved over a period of time, because sometimes when someone doesn't do what we all are doing, we give labels. We use shame and blame, and we try to minimize their creativity, or you're rebellious, so you're not a good person because you don't follow. That was me, the black sheep. And then you become the world changer because you were willing to take on a different belief system that everybody else adopted and was okay with. A lot of people live and die in their comfort zone. Yes, but that's right. Greatness will never be achieved in your comfort zone. Mm-hmm. So you're willing to be able to challenge some of the rules, because some of the rules have been designed to limit you. There
Yes.
was someone else's belief system
That's
that's been
right. That
passed
you
down from
adopted.
generation to
Yeah.
generation.
Yeah.
And until you become the person that breaks the curse or breaks the
Yes.
generational limiting belief,
Yes.
you have to be that one. And if you're willing to deal with the level of being misunderstood, if
Yes.
you're willing to deal with some of the people misunderstanding your purpose and your calling for a short period of time in due season, they'll be able to say, "Oh, that's what you were trying to go after."
Ah.
That's why you were different. If you look at Martin Luther King and you look at Malcolm
Yes.
X, look at some of these powerful people, Mahatma Gandhi, you looked at some of these other people, such as Nelson Mandela, they were willing to be able to be
They were
mislabeled,
willing to be different. Yes.
misidentified,
Yeah.
and be spoken of in a negative way because
Yes.
the vision of what they were given from the divine was bigger than the limiting belief that society and the world tried to give them.
Oh, those are beautiful words. I love that. Yes. So it's like having an inner knowing that what I am doing, there's a reason for it, there's a purpose for it. And I can see that vision of that purpose coming together. So I'm going to ignore what other people are telling me.
And if you have a vision that you can have figured out all on your own, it's too small for you.
Mm.
You want a vision that's going to be able to outlive you, that you could pass on the torch to someone else. And that allows you to know you're operating in your purpose. When I was living in Japan, I could have done the real safe thing. I've been in the military for over 19 years. I retire next year. That's really safe. I don't, for me, that's easy. That's not hard. But I knew it wasn't operating in my depth of my purpose. I've always been a leader. I'm the oldest of 9 grandchildren. I'm the oldest of my siblings. Leadership is natural for me. That's not hard work.
You tell everyone what to do.
That's easy for me, right? But I'm also a better follower than I'm a leader. I serve. One of the people asked me, how am I able to operate with multimillionaires all the time, work underneath and work with them? I said, I serve at an exceptional level because I believe however big that you want to be in the world, serve at that level.
Mm-hmm.
If you're too proud or too arrogant to serve, then you have disqualified yourself to lead. Amazing. And so when I was living in Japan for about 2 years, there was a sermon that I was listening to by a man by the name of Bishop T.D. Jakes, and he was preaching a sermon about living on purpose. Mm-hmm. And that sermon shook me to my core because it says, what am I going to do with the time that I've been given? If I've been given a divine assignment to be able to do something, I'm responsible for finding out why I was put on this earth. And if it's only just to take care of my finances and pay bills till I die, I've not served humanity in a powerful way. Amazing. I've not served the gifts and talents I've been given to impact the world.
So I have a question about that. Does everyone have a purpose that is big like that? Because I find a lot of people search for purpose and then they become dejected and demoralized and they can't find purpose. So does everyone have a purpose that is bigger than, who they are in their everyday life?
Absolutely. I'm a firm believer that everyone has a purpose, right? There is nothing that's designed that does not have a purpose. If you look at the lion being designed, it was designed as a purpose. If you see the elephant that's designed, it was designed with a purpose. If you see a human being, they're designed, we are more powerful when we are connected. Mm-hmm. And if you notice that we have more in common than we disagree about, then you understand that we can create, we can build more, we can solve more problems. I think even when I talk to people, I believe that every person affects at least 3 generations after themselves.
Yes, true.
So if by me just talking to you, I'm actually talking to 3 generations. And so I never minimize who my audience is or who I'm talking to because I understand that the power of vibration is if I drop a pebble in a lake, that vibration of the ripple will continuously go on and on.
Yes, that's right.
It's like the lake not knowing that it's connected to an ocean.
For sure.
And so the beauty is knowing I may not be able to see the ripple effect of how I impact the world, but there is still an impact there.
So Jamal, how should people go about finding what their purpose is? Like what questions do you ask yourself? What do you study? What do you do in order to figure out what that bigger purpose for one's life is? Some people have it already, like I know people who just when they're born, they know what they're going to be and what the change that they're going to make in the world. And then some people I see even in high school, people know, like I have nephews and nieces, and some of them already know that they want to be doctors or they want to be do this, and then I have this nephew who is constantly wondering what he's going to do, and then I have my son who is changing from one program to another program to another program, still looking for where they fit in. So how
Absolutely.
should someone who is searching, how should they go about it?
First, one of the most intimidating questions you can ever ask a high schooler is, so what do you want to be when you grow up?
No, I know exactly right.
There's this pressure for me to give you the answer that is safe,
Yeah.
that makes me worthy and validated of love and respect. But I secretly don't know. I know grown adults who have over
Who don't
$100,000
know.
of
Yes.
debt
Yes.
from the school that
Yeah.
they owe to Sally Mae that can't tell you what they're doing, what they want to do with their
Yeah.
life.
Yeah. Totally
And
get
so
it.
I would start off first with saying, who am I is a journey. It's not a destination.
Right.
Right. The idea of saying, who am I? What are my gifts? What are my talents? What am I passionate about? What do I love? What problems in the world really move me? Right. If it's hunger, if it's making sure people have clean water, if it's making sure people are more aware about mental health, what are the areas that affect me the most? Or sometimes it's looking within. For me, I love to speak life into young men. Okay. Because I came from an absentee household of where I didn't have a father looking at me in my face every day. And so I'm passionate about speaking and empowering young men about how capable or how brilliant they are. When you think about all these personal development conferences, there are more 90 to 85% of them are women.
Right.
And that's why they're excelling.
Yes.
That's why they're doing great in leadership. That's why they're making more money. But I've also been passionate about speaking life into young men to be able to say, no, you're capable, you're brilliant.
Yes, that's right.
The more that we speak life into versions of ourselves,
yes.
Some people, you may have had a traumatic experience. And now that's the very mission that you say, I want to make sure other people don't have to experience this same thing. For me, it was the idea of when it comes to intelligence is I want to make sure that I remind people that there's a genius in them. I want them to be able to focus on their genius so much that they're able to operate from creation versus versus consuming. And the more that we nurture that you're a genius, that you're brilliant, that you're gifted, the more creativity comes out, the more solutions to problems that comes out. And so when you ask the question, what is my life purpose? It's being able to start with, how do I want to impact the world? Mm-hmm. And the world may seem huge because it's 8 billion people. Yes. But you are a world. You are a whole system. You are a whole entity. And it starts with, how do I become the best version of myself? What skills do I want to build? I have these gifts and these talents, whether it be music, whether it be dance, whether it be creative arts, whether it be engineering. How do I want to expand the world because I'm here? I often look at a beach and you often see these footsteps that disappear in the sand. How do I want to leave the world better than how I found it? And it's a journey. It's not just as, oh, I'm here, I've arrived it. And the more that you start to play in that space, you're going to attract other people who have like-minded ideas, who have like-minded compassions.
I hear you. And I'm out there and I'm searching for people who look like me, talk like me, on the inside. But I kind of have difficulty asking my son this question, like, what do you want to impact in the world? He's going to look at me like, what, Mom? So
I get a chance to speak to a lot of young people, and I ask them if they could solve one problem with the world, what would it be?
Okay.
So sometimes it's problem solving, or if you were able to perfect any skill that you have, what would it be? And asking open-ended questions with just curiosity gives them the permission. And sometimes I say, you don't have to have a perfect answer.
I like those questions.
I'm just curious what you're passionate about, what excites you.
Yes.
Because sometimes it starts with the spark of excitement. Well, I'm really excited about music. Okay, tell me more about that. And the more curious you get, without judgment, without having to qualify if it meets your standards, the more that they'll open up about what they're really excited. And many times we quiet our dream because we're not sure how we're going to accomplish it. So it's hard to be able to speak to someone else and say, this is what I want to do. And what happens if I fail at that? Who am I then? Yeah. And so there's this fear of failure that cripples. They say doubt has killed more dreams than courage ever, or that fear will ever will. And because many times the self-doubt stops us from ever even taking the first step.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's true.
Right. And so if we're able to be gracious and patient and say, I'm just curious of what excites you,
Yes.
or if you could impact, it doesn't have to be the world. What are you most intrigued about? What are you most excited about? And for me as a parent, I have a 5-year-old and a 20-year-old. I watch things that they're naturally able to do. Like my daughter, she's naturally able to do choreography. Since she was 2. She can watch people do an entire video of dances, full choreography, 3 or 4 times, and she can do it. So I nurture that particular thing. Yeah. I noticed that she's really good with technology. So I nurture that particular thing. So sometimes as a parent, it's not always about getting them to commit to one thing. It's being able to say, where are you most interested in being able to learn a skill or be able to expand on, even if it doesn't make you money right now? Because oftentimes we try to find what is a safe security job that now I'm chasing security versus purpose.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
Now you can do both, but sometimes giving them the bandwidth to be able to say, you may not make all the money you want to do right now, but you're still operating in your purpose.
I find that everything comes together, like even if you acquire different skills along the way, somehow they are part of who you are. You are the package. And all of that contributes to who you become and what you bring to the table wherever you go, in whatever role you are in.
Right? The journey, I think one of the things that we have to learn in our society, well, with our younger people, is the need to not have to live off the instant gratification. There's such an instant gratification. Yes,
that's right. Yeah.
And if you think about it, it's your best favorite meals are usually slow cooked in an oven.
Yes.
Not microwaved.
Yeah.
And so what we have to challenge our mindsets on is being okay with delayed gratification. That if I put hours in now, even though I'm not able to see all the full benefits of it, at some point I'm going to get to 10,000 hours, right? To be able to know that the fullness of what I'm able to do, I can get small short-term rewards, but the fullness of what I am investing my time, my energy into, I may not see the full result until years later. And when you're able to break that instant gratification, I think you're able to attach to a deeper level of purpose of knowing I'm still on the journey. I'm still on the right direction. And if I make a U-turn or if I make a left turn, that my steps are still ordered in purpose.
Amazing. I totally agree with you. It's that instant gravity, what is it?
Gratification.
Gratification. That is the issue, because when you ask for something, if you go to YouTube, you get an instant response. You go to Google, you get an instant response. You go to McDonald's, your burger is supposed to be ready in 1 minute, right? So, I mean, it's that quick, but skills don't get developed overnight.
And we've trained our younger people that way. All right. And we've evolved so much from the horse and the carriage to we have now Google vehicles with nobody in them who's going to come pick you up and take you to a destination.
Yeah.
Like it used to be a hallmark to get your driver's license. Now it's I'll just take an Uber. So we also have to understand when we give some of our children everything, we also kill their drive to strive for anything outside their comfort zone. And comfort and greatness don't live in the same area. Right. And so sometimes just being aware of how we've trained their mindsets to say, hey, everything won't happen overnight, but there is a deeper benefit and compound interest of success if you're willing to delay gratification.
See, it's interesting you talk about this, because over a period of time, there's more and more specialization going on as far as skill sets are concerned. I remember that when I was in university, everything related to computers was called IT. And it was all in one, like one program. And now, under that umbrella, there are thousands, literally, programs.
Yes.
So we are getting more and more specialized. And I feel that that's part of the issue. Because from where I stand, I don't even know what the entire menu of possibilities is. Right? So
I think I think there's a balance, right? So because if you ask a starving person to hurry up and eat, but you give them all these different options, they can still be hungry. But if you place a meal in front of them that's their favorite meal that grandma's made or mom has made,
Yes.
and it's their favorite meal, their soul will be full. And that's the difference between when you give too many people, when you give too many options in front of you.
Yes.
You give too many choices, the brain is not able to fully focus on full consumption.
I relate to that so much.
I've taken all these knickknacks, and I'm still like, it's eating all the bad food that doesn't fill you hungry. Up, or it has MSG in there, and then 10 minutes later you're still hungry. Now, if you eat that one meal from your that's been not made in the microwave, but been made in the oven, it's fulfilling. You're full. You're going to sleep good. That's right. You're complete and you're whole in that space simply because of the time invested in the outcome.
So you are reminding me of the streaming services, because I can go into one of those, Netflix, Prime, whatever, and I can scroll through so many choices and not land on one. Whereas I think if I had 5 choices, I would pick one.
You would find one. I have, and I think one of the challenges that we taught in society, the more that you have, the more value that you have. And I think that's disingenuous, because the brain has never needed to know what 10,000 people thought about you. The brain has never needed to have the capacity to be able to know all of the different things that we're trying to train it to know when it comes. They said at one point, the average American or the average person's attention span was 12 seconds. That's now 3 seconds.
Yeah.
So it goes to show you, giving too much can dilute the very potency of what your purpose is designed to. Because you're so focused on pleasing everybody that you no longer are able to be who you are naturally designed to be, because you feel like that person is not enough. That person is not worth it.
That reminds me of something that I teach in my programs, is that multitasking, trying to focus on too many things at the same time, is sort of like that, because you're distributing your energy over so many things rather than focusing your energy on one thing and put everything into that, give it your 100% and get it out of the way before you move on to the next thing. And we do that even with our relationships, that we'll be with a person but not pay attention to them because we're trying to do 10 different things. And I find that in relationships, that's where problems start happening, because you're really not present.
And when people talk about relationships don't work, whether it be in with friendships, marriages, with the kids, relationship with your kids, your coworkers, if you're really honest, there's very few relationships that you give 100%. You give 60 here, 20 here, 80 there, and then when it doesn't work out, right? We give versions of ourselves.
Yes, that's right.
We are going to most likely be liked and loved.
Yes.
And then we often have the illusion, I'm working on myself. But there's no measurement of growth. Yes. It's just something we say that makes us feel good. So when a relationship doesn't work, it wasn't meant to be. Or do we have the self-awareness? It's like, I only give 50% to that relationship.
Yeah.
I never gave it 110, or I never gave 100%, because I've been applauded for giving 30% here. And I've been applauded for giving 50% here. And I've never been held accountable to 100% to anything. I think that's one of the things of having the power of choice. Many times we use choice rather than discipline.
Right.
Whatever you discipline yourself to, that's what's going to respond in the most worrisome of times. People, the brain science behind that says you're going to respond to your last level of training no matter what happens. So if you're in a traumatic experience, or if you're having a bad relationship, your last level of training, that's what you're going to show up. It's not what you create in your mind of like, if a bear was to come, no, you're going to respond to your last level of training. And so if you're not training your mind to be positive, to be able to see the opportunity in problems, if you're not training it to be able to find answers, and you're always looking to find what's wrong with the world, if you're looking to find out how you're such a victim, your brain is going to look for that level of training.
So Jamal, it seems to me that in this conversation where I've come in talking to you is that thinking is actually a skill that we should learn. Like
Absolutely.
we
It's a
started with
discipline.
saying, skill. You said you use beautiful words. I'm probably going to butcher them, but you said something about the heart and the mind and the skill, right? Can you
Mm-hmm.
remind me what that was
Yes.
again?
So it's mindset, heart
Heart
set,
set
and
and
skill set.
skill set. Oh, beautiful words. But that's the thing. Thinking in itself is a skill set.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that when you talk about brain science and all of that, it's leading me to believe that thinking in itself is a skill set, and nobody ever taught me. I just learned at random until I became a coach myself, until I fixed my life, I turned things around. That's when I learned that I've got to learn how to think, because that's where the problem is. I didn't know that
Mhm.
before. So how do you teach people to figure out where the problem is? How do you
So
create an awareness that thinking is a skill and people need to learn it?
mindfulness is one of the common techniques that you hear people talk about, is being able to be an observer of your thought and challenge the thought.
Mm-hmm.
Identify, is this an empowering thought or disempowering thought?
Mm-hmm.
So many times we have the brain takes up 30% of the energy in our body. So the brain's never designed to look for fulfillment. Its job is to avoid pain at all costs, to
Mm-hmm.
conserve energy,
Yes.
and on being able to be a predictor of information. And usually it's going to make up whatever the gap there is. So if I say 1, 3, 5, your mind is like, well, what happened to 2?
Mm.
Right? your brain is going to put in information there. And so when it comes to how training yourself to think, it's being observant of your thoughts. So mindfulness is being non-judgmental and observing the thought, or challenging, where did I learn that? And that mindfulness gives you opportunity to be able to filter your belief systems in a different way. Because what you have is an autopilot. The brain and your
Yes.
most of the that
That's
we
right.
have is an
Yeah.
autopilot.
Yep.
And when you're using mindfulness, you're able to press pause. I'm probably dating myself, but there was a time where you didn't have CDs, MP3
Yes.
players, and you had to listen to the radio. And
Yeah.
when your favorite song came on, you press pause, or you recorded it, and then you press pause for the parts you wanted to start and
Yep.
stop. And so when the brain is doing an automatic response based on just everyday life, what mindfulness does, it presses pause and allows you to upgrade that belief system. It allows you to
Mm.
challenge that particular thought. It
I don't
allows you
think
to
I've
be
heard this explanation of mindfulness anywhere. This is beautiful. Keep going, my friend.
mindfulness
I like
gives you
it.
mindfulness gives you the power to press pause on a thought or belief and upgrade it, or change it, or challenge it, or correct it.
Ah,
And so the beauty of that is allowing you the power of choice, that you're still in control. And so if you have 70,000 thoughts a day, how do
yeah.
you know which one's more powerful or important than the other?
Yes.
Writing is a technology. So that's why it's really big on writing an idea or a thought or a process or a belief system out, writing your vision out, because now the brain says, this is in the Google search. Let's go find for all the answers. You say, I want to be a speaker. Now I'm starting to find all the people in the world who are speakers. Now I'm
Right.
trying to now do inspirations on things to talk about. It's kind of like similar to what's in the brain is called the RAS, your reticular activation
Yes.
system.
Yes.
Have you ever decided, hey, I want to go buy a red car?
And then you
All of
start
a
seeing red
sudden,
cars. Yep.
you start seeing red cars all over the place. What happened? The brain was able to focus in on something that you said was valuable, important, and something that you want.
Yeah. It
The
was all.
same thing
It's
happens
not.
to all.
It didn't go and manufacture red cars and put them on the
Right.
street.
It didn't create any red cars. It just brought your awareness to all the red cars that
That
you
were
said that
already
you
there.
wanted. And
Yes.
if it will do that for a red car, what about your dream? What
Mm.
about your business? What about your finances? What about your relationships? All these things are possible when you're able to say, this is what I really want. And this is the energy and time I'm willing to focus, whether it be mindset, heart set, or skill set, to be able to achieve them.
Beautiful. I love it. Jamal, in your practice as a coach and a speaker, how do you utilize these concepts? Who do you teach mostly, and what do you teach?
So I've been given the opportunity to work with some amazing people from all around the world. But I work with a lot of executives, a lot of entrepreneurs, and specifically entrepreneurs. I have a special place in my heart because they don't have the same level of support, right? When you're the business, when you're in a corporation, you have a hierarchy, you have other
Yes.
people who can relate to what you're doing.
Yes.
Entrepreneurs, they're kind of like lone rangers, and they're having to build, and they don't often have the safe space to be able to say, I'm building, but I'm frustrated, or I'm overwhelmed, or I'm stuck, or I'm self-sabotaging, or I'm dealing with leadership issues. But I also love to work with Gen X and Gen Z, or Gen Z millennials as well, because there's a disconnect between Gen X and Gen Y and Z.
Yes.
Right? There's a value system there. And I personally believe that I get to be the bridge between those two, because I was raised in a generation where we had to use the encyclopedia and the internet. Right? So I become the happy medium between showing people how to use their phones, but also being able to understand when internet was a disk that you had to put into the computer, and then you couldn't be on the phone at the same time.
We are dating ourselves, Jamal. We are dating ourselves. I know what you're talking about.
So I understand, like, we understand the idea of a payphone. Yes. My daughter will never understand it. And I think
it's cell phone. Why do you need a payphone?
I think for our younger generation, they are the most technologically advanced generation of our time.
Yes.
But some of the soft skills and the longevity skills that made us great, like the grit, the perseverance, we've kind of not taught them that because we wanted to give them everything we didn't have. And so I become a leader who's able to bridge the gap between the values of Gen X, but also leverage the technological advancements of our younger generation, because the value systems are a little bit different. Yes. But that doesn't mean that they're less than, just like the things that Gen X is able to do. They were able to be great for their time, but how do we make sure that the value systems of the hard work, the creativity, the innovation, the perseverance is added on to the technologically advanced, being able to say we don't have to work twice as hard to be able to get the certain results. And I think as a leader, that's one of my superpowers, of being able to bridge the gap in leadership of expectations, right, and how Y and Z show up. They're not interested in doing a job for 30 years. They don't mind quitting, starting over. Whereas Gen X says we need safety and security, right? So I love their innovation and their creativity of the younger generation. It's just building the gap between some of the values and some of the goals to make sure that they're able to consistently be able to outlive the limiting stories that we've been teaching about each other. Because oftentimes we say, well, young people are lazy, but also we also need them to be, it's not necessarily lazy, they're just accustomed to having answers very, very quickly. And so we're able to build some of those soft skills into superpowers. There's nothing that this generation can do. And what we speak life to, we create. And so we're often constantly talking about how our generation, the younger generation lacks so many different things. Understand that that happened on our watch. And then also being able to bring Generation X and saying, hey, this is some things that we can also help you improve your lives.
Oh my goodness. You just said something powerful. It happened on our watch.
Happened on our watch.
Oh my goodness, Jamal. So do you offer online programs? How do you bridge this gap? How do you teach these skills?
So companies bring me in to do mindset workshops. And I talk about specifically emotional intelligence. So that's something I'm very, very passionate about, is because I've worked with doctors, lawyers, philanthropists, all types of people from different walks of life. And what I'm surprised to know is most people have never taken a class on emotional intelligence. And when it comes to leadership, but also mindset. So companies bring me in to specifically talk about mindset, peak performance, strategies, and leadership development. And what I really do is I teach leaders how to become change agents. And then I also help, I do one-on-ones with executives and entrepreneurs on mindset. And it can be an array of things. I've worked with limiting beliefs, self-sabotage, but also how do I create my next? And so those are the main ways that people bring me. They can bring me in to do facilitation through workshops. They can come, I can do keynote speaking, or I do one-on-ones. So those are some main, I may even do group coaching depending on what the company's needs. So there are some of their junior executives who are up and coming who may need some support. around mindset, and then just how do you carry yourself in a new leadership position, right? How do you deal with
Amazing.
the pressure
Yes.
of
Yeah.
stress, anxiety, overwhelm? How do I make sure that I'm able to operate in my genius and creativity and innovation when it comes to my field? But how also do I lead self-leadership? How do I learn to lead myself
Mm.
so that I can show leadership for others? So these are the areas that I focused on. I know I mentioned quite a few of them, but
Yes.
keynotes, workshops, and one-on-one coaching is where I operate in my highest level of genius.
That's your zone. Yes. So where do people find you if they're looking for you?
Absolutely. So you can find me on social media under Jamal Vallair. I have a website, jamalvallair.com. That is JAMAL, V as in Victor, ALLAIR.com. And you can send me a message there. You can send me a Facebook friend request, or you can find me on Instagram as Jamal, Coach Jamal underscore Vallair. That's JAMAL underscore VALLAIR.
And we'll have those
And
links
I
in
would
the
love
show
to
notes
connect.
as well. Yeah. I'll
Absolutely.
put those under the podcast so people will be able to contact you. Is there a message or a quote that you want to leave our listeners with?
Absolutely. One of the principles that has allowed me to be successful is a principle that I really believe to my core is that your gift will make room for you when you honor and master your gift. And the principle behind that is we've all been given gifts and talents to be productive in this world. And when we focus on mastering them, that's where we're able to really impact the world, but also have a different level of fulfillment based on the time that we've been given on this earth. And I believe that when you learn that or you master that particular principle, that principle will always outlast your feelings and your emotion. So standing on the principle will sustain you over a period of time. But
That's
learning to
beautiful.
master your gift is one of the best gifts you can give to the world, because you're able to do something and take things further than it's ever been before, because you're not a jack of many trades, you're a master of one.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much for being here with us today, Jamal. Really appreciate all
Absolutely. It's my
your
pleasure.
wisdom.
Thank you so
Thank-
much for having me.
Oh, we'll have you back again because there's so much more to be talked about. Thanks again.
Thank you so much.